Hey everyone, me again. So obviously today I'm looking at something considerably more modern than what's kind of appeared on this channel so far. It is still, of course, a milsurp in that it is composed largely of milsurp parts. This is something that is still available on the primary market, although I don't know for how much longer. They tend to retail for maybe $1,200 to $1,400. I was actually able to get this one for $1,025, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, of course, what this is a Marcolmar CETME-L. If you don't know what a CETME-L is, there's quite a few videos out there about them that'll tell you pretty much anything you'd want to know. To make a long story short, this would have been the Spanish military's standard infantry rifle in the 80s and 90s. They were taken out of service, I think, starting in maybe 1999. And of course, in the last few years, the parts kits have been coming into the US, and there's been a couple of different manufacturers using those parts kits to, complete them into semi-auto versions of the same rifle. Out of the two manufacturers, Marcolmar is the more reputable one in terms of quality and reliability. I don't have an HMG version, so I can't, go on at too great a length about that. But there are channels out there that have done side-by-side comparisons. I think there's maybe at least 3 that I've seen. So if you're interested in that, that's out there. Allegedly, the HMG offering is a little truer to the original, including all of its flaws. The Marcolmar gun is like the CETME-L perfected. But in any case, even though these have been around for a few years now, from what I gather, and I could be incorrect about this impression, but they haven't really been the hottest sellers. And there's a few reasons for that. One, of course, is they're relatively expensive. You can get 2, maybe 3 ARs for the cost of one of these, at least if you go for like really budget ARs, or 1 AR and like several thousand rounds of ammo. So from a practical standpoint, you could see why it's not the most appealing proposition, and we'll get into practicality in greater detail in a little bit. The other issue, of course, is that CETME-Ls in general don't really have the loftiest of reputation. In the case of these Marcolmar guns, it's really relatively unfair, I think, and we'll kind of go into that. That's really the whole purpose of the video, is to just kind of discuss some of the reasons why you might want to own one of these, some of the reasons why you might not, address some of the common concerns or complaints that people might experience with CETME-Ls, and yeah, we'll get into it. So one of the concerns people do have about these is, things like build quality. Allegedly, they were not terribly popular with the actual Spanish troops that used them at the time. There is truth to this, but this really has largely been addressed by Marcolmar. One of the things they found, one of the major culprits, was the springs, and so the springs in these guns are redesigned, they're brand new. So among other things, of course, but yeah, as far as quality concerns, these are very high quality guns. They're very well made. I wouldn't really have any worries about quality, at least with these Marcolmar versions. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock in that. The other concern people have, of course, is magazine interchangeability. So when the original military guns, the magazines were patterned very closely off of your kind of standard NATO M16 AR type magazines, but they were just different enough for there to be compatibility problems. But again, with the Marcolmar guns, this has been addressed. These do run on standard NATO magazines. You don't have to look up and try to find CETME-L magazines specifically. Now, there are reports that because of this magwell design, there are issues with polymer magazines. I haven't tried too many of them. The Lancer ones do seem to work. But yeah, nonetheless, at least at the time of this recording, mags for these are still very affordable. They're pretty much everywhere. You don't have to look up anything rare or proprietary or expensive, so I wouldn't let that stop you either. Of course, another concern that I've kind of seen brought up is that these guns are heavy. This is sort of true, but really only sort of. It's not that they're heavy overall, they're just kind of heavy for their class, I guess. I weighed this, this particular one on a postal scale that I have. It came to about 8.75 pounds. Compare that to a bare bones AR in kind of the M4 configuration. That's more like, that came to probably more like 6.5. My AK in the 103 pattern is, more like 7.1. So compared to some of its rivals, I guess you could say, it is heavy, but it's not that it weighs, something stupid like 15 pounds. But if you're going to start kind of applying some of these practical standards, yeah, I think the gun is going to come up a little short compared to an AR and AK, and for more reasons than just weight. So if you're kind of after like strictly the optimum choice for a practical rifle, I don't think this is gonna cut it in that regard. Really, this is kind of a semi-collectible that's still really cool. It's fun to shoot. You can definitely run competitions with it, something like that. Could it have practical use? Yeah, it absolutely could. But I look at it kind of like owning any other milsurp. Could you take a K98K hunting? Yeah, you absolutely could. Many people have. Many people do. But if you were strictly after a hunting rifle and nothing else, would that really be the best choice for the money? Yeah, probably not. So that's kind of where I fall on that one. Okay, this next one is kind of a big one, and that's the issue of ammo pickiness. I've seen some mixed reviews. Some people say it runs on everything from Tula on up. Some say no, it's got to be NATO spec only, and even then the heavier the better. And they'll point out that the manual even says as much. This last bit is actually some slight misinformation. When you get one of these new, it'll come with one of these cards, and this statement is reiterated in the manual as well. It states that this is a roller delayed gun, and it does have new components, so they recommend breaking it in with something like M855. It does have a break-in period, but after that, it really should run on a variety of commercial options as well. So it's a small distinction, but it's kind of an important one in that the manufacturer is not literally claiming that it's got to be like M855 or nothing at all. This particular gun, it seems to run on everything. I've run, Russian steel case. I've run M855. I've run stuff that's kind of in between, whether it's, brass case 223 commercial, some other loadings of 556 NATO. It just seems to run with all of it. Obviously, your mileage may vary. You may need a more involved break-in period like they recommend, but I wouldn't let that stop you. Now, one ammo concern that might stop you is that these guns are very, very harsh on brass. They kind of eject. They hit this little deflector here. And of course, they have fluted chambers as well to help with extraction. So it's a pretty violent action on brass. And so if you're a reloader, maybe I'd have second thoughts if you plan reloading for this. But other than that, I wouldn't let the ammo issue be a showstopper either. Okay, so should you get one of these? Well, I think I answered that question, but if anybody needs a tidy conclusion, it depends. If you're after a strictly practical modern sporting rifle, this is really probably not the best choice for your money. If that's all that you want, something like an AR or an AK would do better in that regard. Now, if you're after something that's, again, somewhat collectible, something cool, something your friends don't have, but you still could use, in some practical situations, then yeah, absolutely. They're high quality guns. They're fun. They're interesting. They do have some actual military provenance. So if that's the sort of thing you're after, then yeah, absolutely. Of course, when the parts kits run out, these things almost certainly will go up in value significantly because that's kind of the pattern that all these things follow. So yeah, if you're kind of looking for something in the collectible and cool realm, absolutely. If you're after something where you just want, a very practical semi-auto rifle in an intermediate caliber, for the money, it probably isn't the best choice. But really, that's kind of it. Thank you for watching as always.